With the initial ETF rollout, the perspective would be that this would give broader access to the retail side of the market, as well as segments of the institutional side of the market. What I would say is we're still early in this ETF cycle though, right? It was approved earlier this month. And within that, you're still seeing some platforms not actually allow their end clients to trade this asset, right? Vanguard is an example, $7 trillion of assets that are invested there. You're not seeing them basically allow access to Bitcoin ETF vehicles. You've seen some of the other brokerages still working through that cycle. And so from a retail investor perspective, it should open up access, but I think it's also a longer term cycle as to how these really open up over time.
So we had Bitcoin ETF. Do you expect other crypto spot ETFs to get approved?
Yeah, so I think the next ETF that the market is looking at right now is the Ethereum ETF. And specifically within that, there's a perspective from some market participants that you could see an ETH ETF approved later this year. What I would say is, in contrast to the Bitcoin ETF, that realistically through Q3 and Q4, the market consensus was this was likely to happen. The ETH ETF, there's not the same level of consensus right now. So I think what we'll see right now, we have some clients that anticipate this happening later this year. Others think it's a longer road ahead. I think that the market's still waiting to determine what ultimately happens here.
It looks like another catalyst potentially that the SEC is seeking comments on a proposal to allow options trading on BlackRock's ETF. So how do you see that one unfolding?
Yeah, so I think one of the interesting elements in relation to the ETF approval itself is the potential to catalyze greater options market activity domestically in the United States. We've actually seen substantial options growth in our own business. Just for context, Q3 to Q4, FalconX's options business grew 10x quarter over quarter. And so currently one of the largest options market participants on the institutional side of the market. And if I look at why that matters, right? People are looking for different ways to express their views within this market, as well as to hedge their exposure. And over time, what you see as these options markets evolve around ETFs is actually greater liquidity going into those ETF instruments itself. And in the future, potentially a lowering of volatility, right? So if you look at gold as an analogy, gold ETF options markets around those ETFs, what you saw is over time, that's a more liquid market, lower volatility within that market itself. And that actually attracts more capital over time because it's a more investable asset that is less volatile.
Largest institutional crypto prime brokerage in the world. How do you define that?
How do I define?
Largest, like, is it
like by volume?
Transaction volume? How's that work?
Yeah, so defined from a volume perspective there, right? So like I mentioned, we're active both on spot markets, derivatives markets, and partnering with clients both in the US and globally.
So what are other, like, who do you compete with for that market share?
Yeah, so look, if I look at the crypto market and where prime brokerage sits within this ecosystem, you have different players that are providing different products and services across the board, right? It's not like traditional financial services where you can go to Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan and get basically most things that you need from an institutional market participation perspective. So where we're focused is trading, spot and derivatives markets, the extension of credit and solving capital efficiency for our customers, and providing technology to facilitate risk management. As it relates to competition, what you see is we compete with different players in each of those different segments. Those could be some of the proprietary trading firms in one. It could be other trading market participants in the other. But from my perspective, look, there's a huge market opportunity here. The question is how we grow this over time. I think the ETF is a great catalyst, and we're excited to continue with partner with a wide variety of market participants to grow the pie.
So I know that you're working with institutional clients, but I got to ask on behalf of myself and maybe other, retail participants who are maybe a little bit hesitant to get into crypto. There's obviously, I think since it began, just been a lot of skepticism around the asset, and obviously with FTX imploding, like a lot of concerns about the viability of it. So what's your pitch to somebody who's not involved in crypto, why they should?
Yeah, so I don't spend much time actually convincing people to be active within the crypto space.
Probably because they already are with the people you deal with.
A lot of the people that come to me, right, they're actually active already.
Yes.
But look, within that, if I think what's the value within crypto, right, and where's the value within Bitcoin, and why are people excited about the ETF as an example here? What you're looking at is a non-sovereign store of value that's digitally scarce and solving what many refer to as a digital gold, right? Why does that matter today, right? We're looking at a macroeconomic landscape of 70 plus elections globally, not just in the US. Within that, we'd anticipate loosened monetary policy that could lead to inflation. Do you want to protect your assets against that? And then the other area that we see, our clients investing within crypto is some believe it could be a good geopolitical hedge over time. An increasingly uncertain geopolitical landscape, as you guys know. The question is a portion of your portfolio make sense to allocate to this asset class? But obviously, always recommend people look at all the risks and corresponding volatility associated
Read the
with
fine print, I'm sure.